And those two commissioners are in the studio with us now, Rasheen Aldridge and Kevin Allbrand. Just watching you guys here now. Are you guys friends?
No, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, we can say that.
When you sat down on like day one of the Ferguson Commission, did you think there was a place for a protester in the serious work that you were about to take on?
Well, absolutely, because that's the reason we got to where we are. I don't remember when we first met, but we saw the need to talk outside of commission, and we actually met for coffee. And
or the two of you guys?
Yeah, yeah, and because I thought it was important that we talked one-on-one, and we sat hour and a half, talked, and came to some understandings. We didn't agree on everything, but we came to some understandings.
Do you remember that cup of coffee?
Yep, I remember that cup of coffee, and it was like, am I really meeting with this guy? Coming from being a protester in the early days, because when the commission got formed, it was still very heated in Ferguson, and my emotions towards law enforcement was very angry and hurt still. So it wasn't the first person that I would have, wanted to have coffee with, but I do appreciate Kevin for extending that hand out. It definitely didn't come from me, and it was something that at that beginning really changed the outcome of how our relationship. He
made the first move. Is that what you're saying?
He did. He pushed up on me first.
So I'm curious. We've got a lot of this report that's to be discussed and talked about. But are you different now than before you started on the commission?
Maybe a little bit. I definitely see the other side of the coin a little bit more. I don't think I've changed. I think I've been the same type of person throughout my whole life. Yeah. Relationships are it seems simplistic, but reforming broken relationships and creating new ones is the key for all of this to begin. And that's how the whole commission, I don't know how many people Rasheen knew, but I didn't know anybody on that commission when we started, and I could pretty much say we're all pretty good friends right now.
Mm-hmm. What was the work like? Because I mean, with that many proposals whittled down to 30, if it was a PTO meeting, it wouldn't go smooth. What was the work like?
They didn't go smooth. They didn't all go smooth, I can tell you that. There was some very spirited discussion, And when you get that group of people, very smart people and driven people together, there is spirited discussion, and that was good. Because there were a lot of things that didn't make the recommendations that I was adamantly opposed to, and there were things that I didn't agree with that did make it. But yeah, there were some heated meetings.
Yeah, we didn't necessarily always agree with each other, commissioners, let alone the community who brought the recommendations to us. But we started off really, like Kevin said, not knowing each other. I knew Starsky and Tracy a little bit from being out in the streets, but not the other ones on the commission. So not having that relationship and having to work on such a tough issue and talking about race and not maybe knowing where Kevin's going to come from, it made it a difficult process. And it wasn't always, yay, yay, yay. Mm-hmm. Sometimes, as you've seen at the commission meetings, it was a lot of anger sometimes, honestly, of passion built behind certain recommendations that felt would benefit the community, benefit the city, the region.
So without sounding too after-school special, I mean, is there anything that you guys learned in your relationship or in the relationships you built across the commission that we can kind of take out on a macro level? Is there work that maybe you guys did that can give us some hope for the rest of the region as we look at the recommendations and the calls to action?
Well, and specifically as it relates to law enforcement, I think it's about rebuilding the relationships. And I think one of the big problems was during the economic downturn, cities were losing money. And one of the first budgets that got hit was public safety. Now, COPS programs that were in place before were the first things that got cut. So some police agencies were just responding call to call to call, did not have time to do their problem-oriented policing. And now I think we're getting back to that. Department of Justice just released a bunch of COPS grant money back. So hopefully we'll have time to get out of the cars and do the problem-oriented policing and rebuild those relationships. And I think that's the important thing.
Mm-hmm. And to piggyback a little bit on it, I honestly believe relationships are key. If you don't know who's in your community, and if you don't, if I'm an officer and I'm driving down the street, if there was a relationship between Darren Wilson and Michael Brown, it may not turn out the same way. Darren Wilson could have been like, hey, Mike, get out the street, but not having that relationship with the people in that community, it makes a big difference. I remember being young and living in the 5th Ward in Murphy Park, and the police used to pull into our complex, and they used to hand out baseball cards, and you kind of built a rapport with that police officer. Besides seeing him, maybe pull over one or two, that's not the only interaction that you've seen of law enforcement and in your community. They were coming in, they were talking to you, they would joke with you, you would laugh a little bit, and especially at a young age, having that relationship start was it made me look at things differently. Even going out into Ferguson, I think that's why it was so difficult for me, because I gave law enforcement the benefit of the doubt, because there was a little bit of a relationship built when I was young.
You remember the baseball card handing out days?
Yeah, that was a huge program. We did that for several years in the city of St. Louis, and to be quite frank, it was probably budget reasons why we don't do that anymore.
I'm curious. One key issue, and we have so many that are on this report that you hope people focus on. You talk about relationships, but I'm thinking of the actual action items.
The two biggest things that if in my opinion, I think if we pull out this report that would make a huge difference in our region is, and I know it's going to be difficult, one is consolidating some of these municipalities, knowing that some of these municipalities cannot operate if they're not really pulling over the community, if they're not using the community as almost a collection agency. And also really looking at some of the things around youth thriving. And I think that's a huge problem in our region, is we haven't really thought about what economic mobility really is. We continue to look at economic development and not really economic mobility. And those are two different things. And if we look at some of those recommendations and really, like the childhood savings account, giving students or young people an account when they come into this world, so when they go into college, there's already money, putting people at the same playing field, really.
It's hard. It's hard to pick one thing, I guess,
Yeah.
and maybe that's the point, that it's going to take more than just one thing.